In August of 2012, the Dublin Irish Festival will celebrate its 25th anniversary, and what started as a small gathering of residents will once again welcome thousands of guests to the city in order to celebrate all things Irish. What many people who attend this year's event may not know is that the grand festival that they know and love today started out as a much smaller gathering and was created by a group of founders in the 1980s. A group that recently got together to discuss the early days of the festival, its growth throughout the years, and more importantly, what they love most about the event they created. The first Dublin Irish Festival was held in 1988, but that event would never have been possible without the foresight of some local government officials.
Okay, I was on city council in the late 80s, and David Ambrose and I went to a panel discussion with people from Charleston, South Carolina, and Sunnyvale, California, people who were from cities that had used their taxes to create festivals, to bring tourists and visitors into the community and enhance their quality of life. And we came back, and I was a lawyer, and I looked in the law, and sure enough, we had a bed tax, and we could use it, and we could vote it in Dublin. So after a few bumps in the road, we finally passed it in a special election, and then we passed an ordinance that required that every bit of the money from the taxes went for special events, beautification of the city, and of course there was a statutorily required amount that went to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. But then beyond that, anything else that would bring tourists and visitors to the city. So since then, and then Mary Margaret McLaren came to me and said, I have an idea for our first event. And that was how it started.
You were the push, you were the drive, and besides that, you knew the ins and outs of how to do it, which was, what did we know? It was great.
Thank you. Yeah, it usually took me a year to educate and persuade the city council to vote something that we found out about at the National League of Cities Conference. And all I had to say to that city council was, you know, if we do this, we'll be on the cutting edge, and everybody else, all the cities in the county will follow us.
Following the implementation of Dublin's bed tax, the original festival founders wished to create what would later become the Dublin Irish Festival. It was an event that would complement the Columbus Feis, an international dance competition held in the area. At first, some within the community were skeptical about holding an Irish-themed festival due to Dublin's small Irish population, but those who were opposed at first quickly came around.
But remember the fact that there was this conversation on city council. What makes you think we're all that Irish, blah, blah, blah? And then Kitty, tell what you did about the photographs.
I remember I had read in the paper, prior to that, I read in the paper about Barbara and Mary Margaret, and I had just moved into a new home in Dublin. I'm like, I need to get involved with these people. I just need to. So that's where it started. And then as it started to snowball, we thought, we're going to do an Irish festival. What are we going to do? How can we say that Dublin, Ohio is Irish? Even though most of the city council at that point said, that's kind of goofy. I went around, I took my camera, I took photographs of anything that had a shamrock in it in the city, including the policeman's emblem, his thing, and everything I could find, and all the fences, the stone walls, the names of streets like Donegal Cliffs. I took all this stuff and said, you know, you guys, we're already doing it. Let's take it to the next level. And when the Feis was coming to Dublin, why don't we put together an event? We can keep the people who are coming to the dance competition, have them stay overnight, give them something to do that night. That way we can have them stay in the hotels. They'll have a really good evening and make a little money for the city. So that was how it all started.
The first Dublin Irish Festival was held in August of 1988 and consisted of a handful of Irish dancers and musicians gathered on the tennis courts at Kaufman Park.
I remember the first festival, if I remember this right, it being 25 years ago. I may have the details just a little bit skewed, but I believe it was first held on the tennis courts behind City Hall. And the nets were taken down, and I think a very small stage, I mean, maybe this high off the ground. But it was on the tennis court. I think we had some lights. We might have had, some kind of vending, some kind of food of some sort. And I don't know how many people came. There might have been, several hundred, I would assume.
You know, that was hard to figure out. I remember a couple of years, a bunch of us sitting around. We had the tickets that, and then we're counting tickets to see how many people were there, and that was really primitive.
We were sort of, not ragtag, but I'm glad you're organized today. And you think about it, we had the most popular, famous band in the world, and the Chieftains there, and that was huge for our little city of Dublin, and we were very, very proud of it. Those type of moments with the rainstorm and wondering if we get enough people in there, and having them to have enough costume rooms to get dressed in. Those are all the type of things that happen in something like this. It was great. I loved it, and I miss it.
And everything was like doing it for the first time. We were learning as we did it.
You're right. It was for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, everybody knows what they're doing. It's just wonderful.
And hundreds of volunteers.
Yeah.
When I think about how it started, sorry, Bill, when I think about how it started with a handful of people, a handful of volunteers, maybe 10, maybe 12, and we just had our own things that each of us did, and we were all volunteers.
And the first year, because it was supposed to be like an extension of the festival, on Saturday night we only had a band where they could dance to, and then we had the dog. And I think the first year you brought all the cars, the antique cars. Yeah, we had all the antique cars the first year.
We did everything we could to promote this thing.
Yeah, we wanted to get everybody we could
Yeah.
get just to see,
Well,
to
it's
bring them in.
German-made cars.
We brought in all these
Whatever.
antique cars, and we brought in the dogs.
It was an idea of we wanted it to work but didn't know exactly how to do it, so we did everything. And it was
That's a good point.
a survival of the fittest
That's a
of
good point.
promotions. Whatever worked, we kept.
Yeah.
But since we didn't know anything,
And we didn't know any better.
exactly. So weren't
Nobody
you
was telling
disappointed?
us, don't do it.
Yeah, we were just talk to people, and Kitty did some research on Irish bands, and I did a lot of research, and someone told me about this Mick Maloney guy, that he was really good, and so I picked up the phone, and at that time he was in Philadelphia, teaching at some school in Philadelphia, and he answered the phone, and I asked him to come, and he showed up, and everybody said, "How did you get Mick Maloney here?" I said, "Just picked up the phone and called him."
In just a few short years, the Dublin Irish Festival began to grow, and eventually the task of putting it on each year was taken over by the city. In order to put on the best event possible each year, Dublin hired a staff member to oversee the festival and help usher it into the future.
I remember when we talked about when the Dublin Irish Celebration, which was the founding organization, when we talked about having the city take it over, or partnering with the city, there was a lot of angst. There was a lot of discussion, and there were a lot of people who were pro and a lot of people who were vehemently opposed to it. Because everybody felt, those who were opposed said, they're going to take the Irish out of it. It's not going to be an Irish festival, it'll be a community festival. And Sandra said, no, just work with us, and we did, and I've never been so proud. It was a little bit hard to give it up, like you were giving away your
Our baby
family
grew
member.
up. Is what we
Yep.
used to say. Our baby grew up.
Our
We had to
baby
give it,
grew
let
up,
it go.
and we couldn't, we didn't have, our little group have we didn't have enough time. We couldn't put in enough time to make it as big as we all wanted it to be. So I remain very grateful to the city of Dublin for really taking it and investing as much as they have into it, because I think it is a wonderful event for the city.
Kitty, do you remember the mayor at the time? I remember the support that we got
Yeah.
from him.
Yep.
And that was really important, I think, to the committee and to a lot of the whole development of
Well,
the
you
program.
came into it when you asked me, what could I do to
Yeah,
become
well-
involved in Dublin politics and government? And I said, get on the Irish
Yeah, I was
Festival.
very much just a supporting role compared to you all. I mean, you all had the vision and the leadership to put it together, but you had me do the legal work of incorporating and getting the tax exempt status and all that, so that was kind of my part in it.
But isn't it amazing when we're talking here about this small group of people, each one did a little relative, I mean, it was a totally small job, absolutely small. Each one of us did something, and now look at it. And we all have to really salute Dublin. This, I've noticed, and I've talked to people, this is a community thing. People, this is the community's festival. It belongs to the people. You know, I mean, who would ever have thought this would happen? It's totally amazing. And you have to say, it's because Dublin did it. A struggling group of volunteers would have had a lot of fun, because we all had a lot of fun. But to turn it into this tremendously successful and, well, profitable but rewarding experience, I think it's just.
Well, I think the big step was hiring Sandra. You know, the city council said, you know, this is getting bigger, we need to have professional oversight and organization, and that was when we decided to create Sandra's position, which was bifurcated public relations and special events. I remember one time she sent a letter and said, what do you want me to focus on? I mean, I need to make some priorities here. Nobody ever answered her. So, you know, she had to hire people, of course. But she was the one who really professionalized the whole thing.
Yeah, I remember those meetings we had that, you know, when we were trying to figure out how can we publicize this and get it to grow bigger, and that was one of the, I think it was your idea that we have a public relations department or something within the city.
You know, people watching this may not realize, it's only 25 years ago, but correct me if I'm wrong, Barb, I think we were a town of about 5,000?
Yeah, we turned 5,000 the year before.
The grassroots nature of the event that
Yeah.
we're describing, I think, reflects
It was a
who we
small
were.
city, yeah.
We were a small town. And when, you know, Sandra came aboard, and there's been 12 councils since then, and 6 or 7 or 8 mayors, there's always been support, and that's been important. And in our visioning, I think, starting with you, we talked about building community, because we were growing so fast. So how do you put together this community in a cohesive way, and what kind of things do you bring in? And one of the things was cultural events and sporting events through the BedTech. So that's how, through all these years, there's always been unwavering support, and I think that's been important.
Yeah.
And the nice thing for Dublin, actually, was they didn't have to do a dry run to see if it would work, because we were the dry run.
Well, just
We broke.
incrementally,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it built.
It
Yeah.
didn't have to be something that we don't know if it's going to work or not, but let's try it. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
But this is Dublin. They got it right the first time. They did it right.
Throughout the 1990s and into the new millennium, the Dublin Irish Festival grew and grew, with attendance reaching over 100,000 people in 2009. Over the years, the founders were on hand to watch it grow and enjoy what had become of their little idea.
It seems like, if I remember right, we expanded what we were doing. Mostly at the beginning was mostly music and dancing, and then we added some food, and then we added the cultural things and so forth. And the more people we got as volunteers and to serve on committees, we would gather people from different Irish organizations, and they brought their knowledge with them and the things that they wanted to recommend. And so the more people we had, the bigger our base. We kind of created this really big, diverse kind of festival that still had its focus in Irish culture. And that's my guess. I think that's how we ended up with Storytellers and the Vikings, and then the guy that brings his dogs, and all of those things.
What's the group of young ladies that do the step dance, and we've had them in the pub, and they just knock them dead,
Is that the Rich and Stim's Academy?
I guess.
Tim Academy,
Yes,
yep.
yes, that's it.
Well, you remember back at the beginning, there was one dance school
Yeah.
in Columbus, and now hundreds of dancers in Columbus and Central
Yeah, I think
Ohio.
there's 7 or 8 dance schools.
It's
Is there
amazing.
anything in the world more beautiful than that? I
I would
swear.
think probably not.
Oh, gosh.
Gosh, back in
Thinking
the
to a former
Ballet?
dancer right there.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
actually thinking, I think I danced at the first festival, but I don't think I could do any of that now.
Could you teach an old guy?
I don't even think I could do that, but I know I can hook you up with somebody who can.
Some of the best Irish dancers, the execution of their patterns and the execution of their timing, and that gets into the bones, that gets into your bones. And I go for that when I'm there.
It seemed like the more we grew, the more people in the Irish community, greater Irish community, not just in Central Ohio, heard about us. And they would come and they would bring us ideas, and then people just wanted to be part of it, and they wanted to be a vendor, or they wanted to be a musician or something. And so
Yeah.
instead of us going out making phone calls trying to get artists and musicians, people came to us, or now they go to the city and they want to be part of this festival.
And I think that when we got big names the first 2 or 3 years, people, I remember Dave Murphy saying, how did you ever get these people? I said, you just pick up the phone and call them. And again, we never had contracts with them until we got involved with the city, and some city attorney insisted we had to have contracts. I think it's very emotional. There are days when I could just go through the festival and cry all the way through it, because it's just, here we sat in that bench in the rain and said, oh, we could, do you remember that? We could have a big festival, we could fill this whole park up, you know, and this guy's saying, yeah, right. And here we are, we did it. Without the city of Dublin, though, we couldn't have done it.
Yeah, true.
I was going to give another expression from somebody that's left Dublin and returning to Cleveland. And about 2 years ago, somebody from the Irish community, we were talking about celebrations. And this woman said, you want a celebration, you go to Dublin, Ohio. They have the best celebration of all. I said, really? Tell me about it. So they told me about it, and I says, I'm really glad to hear that. I was part of the beginning. And I think that what you mentioned before, and what you started, is that when you get the city involved as the participant, as opposed to just being the oversee regulator, that's where the difference is made. That's a huge difference. Other cities don't have that.
Yeah.
And it's clear that Dublin has figured it out, and figured it out the right way.
Katie, I want to piggyback on something you brought up earlier. You were pointing out that how the nucleus of this Irish community begot more Irish, you know, and they also got the non-Irish, because there's so many, and I happen to be one of them. I haven't got an ounce of Irish blood, but I want it. And if anybody is willing to volunteer a transfusion.
Or do your genealogy.
Yeah, right.
We'll figure it out. We'll adopt you for a day.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, that's true. So many, the Irish beget, they do. It's so true.
Wherever you turn, whatever age you are, whatever your inclination is, whatever your background is, culturally or simply drinking beer, there's something for everybody, every age. It's so encompassing of the community. This is an overwhelming observation. You can't miss it.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the, I remember, you reminded me of, I live and work in Dublin, and as we would get closer to the festival, I would drive down Post Road, and I would see the tents starting to go up about a week or 2 weeks before, and I would kind of get this little bubble of excitement. And even though I knew we'd be working during the weekend, and it's a long, long haul for 3 days for those of us who are on the committees, but still, it was always exciting to see the tents go up. I just knew it was going to be fun.
Well, I've watched, I moved to Worthington in '93, so I come every year and kind of see how it's expanded and what new things are there. And I just love every part of it. I love seeing the kids come down from the Fesh and perform on the stage there. And that little bit of authentic dancing really is kind of the core of it in a sense, because that's connected with the Fesh and the ongoing Irish-American connection to Ireland, and I really like that. But this year, my husband and I finally are joining the Emerald Club, and we're going to stay here all 3 days and see everything, including the rock bands. So,
I love to see the dancers. I love the authentic traditional music, and I really like the traditions. We have a tradition stage where we have people come in and talk about traditions in Ireland or aspects of the Irish history or the Irish culture. And as long as it's true Irish culture and not fake, I love it. Otherwise, forget it.
I think what I think of, the Irish are very proud of their culture. And I get to tell my grandchildren I was involved in something that started off as an idea in this little town of Dublin, Ohio, that's grown into an annual event that celebrates that culture. And I'm very proud of that, and I think that's my memory.
Beyond the cultural and the music and the dance, I think that for me, the greatest thing about it is the community that we built. It kind of is who we are now. It punctuates who we are. It gives people a snapshot of who Dublin, Ohio is, and whether you're 5 or 15, high school age or older, you know, they've got the rock bands and older. There's just such diversity of people that are there, and I think it ties us together. I think that's a good thing.
Today, the Dublin Irish Festival is the city's signature event, and people travel from all over the globe to attend each year. For those who were there at the beginning, the 25 years the festival has been around have been some of the best and most memorable of their lives, and many look forward to the next 25.
I hope that the next 25 years brings us the same amount of enthusiasm, the same amount of focus on Irish culture, and I don't know that the festival can get any bigger space-wise. I just hope that it continues to move forward, have cutting-edge musicians, and continue just to be just the absolute fabulous event that it is today.
I'm 75 now, and I'll come back in my wheelchair when I'm 100, 25 years from now, to see what's going on.
I think the festival clearly represents excellence in the city of Dublin. It represents community. It represents volunteerism, and certainly encompasses culture, and I would hope those things all continue.